Basement waterproofers in Portland and Eugene might go out of business if builders and homeowners did these 5 things to their home. The only thing worse than having to tear up your newly finished basement is paying to make sure it doesn't have to happen again. No one wants to call us. But by the end of the video, you will know the 5 must-do groundwater management tasks to avoid calling your local basement or crawl space waterproofing contractor. Let's dive in. Number 1, gutters. Now, this does get blown out of proportion very often. We'll go into homes that have flooded really badly, multiple feet in the crawl space, and someone would have just told them, well, I cleaned my gutters. Oh, it was just my gutter that was overflowing. That is not the case. However, overflowing gutters that are neglected for many years or even just a season will obviously drastically increase the amount of soil saturation around the home. You need to clean your gutters. Typically, when I show up to a home, a very common question that I ask homeowners is, how often do you clean your gutters? And then as they're about to say, I interrupt them and I say, do it 2 times more. Because if you're doing it once a year and you forget by a month or you forget by the entire year, that means you're not doing it at all that year. You're probably really only doing it every 18 months. That's not enough, especially in Portland and Eugene and Vancouver, where we work most. This is not enough. You have to clean your gutters multiple times a year, probably at least twice a year. Clean gutters that are flowing properly to the gutter downspouts will collect thousands and thousands of gallons from roof water runoff and keep it away from your home. You cannot neglect this. This is very important. And if you're sure to have this from the get-go, you have a very high chance of buying a lot of time and avoiding having to call a basement waterproofer. Number 2, and now this is related to gutters, it's your downspouts. Your downspouts are worthless if you do not have good gutters, but your gutters are worthless if you do not have good downspouts. Downspouts take the water from the gutters, and typically in new construction especially, they hook up to black ABS pipe and it runs underground to a stormwater management system. This system will run all the way around the perimeter of the foundation and it'll stub up above ground for the gutters to hook up to, and it'll take it to the street or stormwater management system. You will also have a low point drain ran to this too under the crawl space. This is all tied to your stormwater management system. If your downspouts are clogged, what it will look like is it'll be bubbling up around where it's connected to the gutter. It is very rare that we get rainstorms or situations where a underground downspout system cannot handle the amount of roof water that's coming in. So any sort of backup is almost always going to be a clog. If you're adding downspouts, if you do not have downspouts, it is very important that you get them as far away as possible from the home. When we're installing downspouts, if we can get it to the street, if we can get it at least 15 feet away from the home, if not more, that is always the goal. But in an ideal world, it would go to the street. It would go to a stormwater management system. Let's make it the city's problem. Let's make them do something for once. Now, fixing your downspouts does not do soil dry out. You're almost always going to have a wet basement or crawl space because the soil is so saturated, it cannot take on any more water. So the easiest and best place for it to go is inside of your home. These are methods to expand the window of time to avoid calling a basement waterproofer. It is not a way to remove water from the soil. So it is very important to not find a false sense of security in gutter maintenance and downspout maintenance. This is not waterproofing. This is just a tool that we use. This is something that homeowners can and should do. And if your downspouts are just dumping right next to your foundation, you have to get that fixed. Even if it's dry, you have to get that fixed, because what's even worse than basement waterproofing is having to do major foundation restoration. Now, you will always find someone who cleaned their gutters and did their downspouts and they claim that their basement is now dry. It's now no longer a problem. You know, maybe. I hope so. But it's extremely unlikely because the basement is wet because of the soil saturation. So that soil is extremely saturated. Water is sitting there because the downspout was clogged, pouring over there. Now that it's no longer pouring over there, it's not adding to it. But over the years, as more rainwater comes in, as the water table rises and drops, that place is now more vulnerable because it was neglected for so long. So the big takeaway with gutters and downspouts is false sense of security. We don't want to have it. We don't want to fix those things and then go back and fix our basement thinking it's all good. Number 3, crack repair. Foundation crack repair is very important and it's very neglected. And the reality is most cracks are non-structural. Most cracks aren't something that we need to write home about, that we need to freak out about. However, if they're ignored, they can create a situation where it is worse. If you have a small crack, it is very important that we're able to inject it. We're able to put resins in it, polyfoam. We have a lot of tools in our belt, carbon fiber, a lot of non-invasive things that are still expensive. They can still be a couple $1,000s. However, if we do this, we're able to stop water coming in. We're able to stop it from making it worse. Water flowing through cracks makes it worse. Water carved the Grand Canyon. Your 50-year-old foundation is nothing to it. And if it is something more serious and it's out of our realm, we have exceptional referral partners for people who can address this properly with steel, with more carbon fiber. The world of crack repair and foundation repair is in its golden age. There's some very cool stuff out there, but ignoring it will severely increase the likelihood that you A, have to do something more expensive, and B, have to call a waterproofer. The last thing you want to do is do major foundation restoration and waterproofing. Number 4, sump pumps. Yes, sump pumps are key. As we talked about soil dryout, sump pumps are great because they create soil dryout. Low point drains and crawl spaces are a gimmick. I don't care what the building code says. They are stupid. They don't do anything. They're almost always installed improperly. They're almost always high, or they just shoved into dirt. We see it all the time. Low point drains are there if it floods, if it gets super high. But if you have a 1,000 square foot foundation and you have a low point drain in one corner and water coming in on the other corner, how is water going to get over there unless it's multiple feet high, multiple inches high? Low point drains are not a soil dryout. It is not waterproofing. Sump pumps are very important. We love sump pumps. Of course, the guy who sells sump pumps wants you to install a sump pump. I want you to install a sump pump because they're cheap, they're reliable, they're quiet, excellent way to create some peace of mind, to constantly create soil dryout. Of course, if we get in a basement or a crawl space and it is just bone dry, we're not going to push a sump pump. But it is something you should watch out for, and it is something that you shouldn't be afraid of. They are not that big of an expense. Maintenance is minimal to none now. And if you do want someone to go down there, we will go down there and do sump pump maintenance for fairly inexpensive every single year. Sump pumps are excellent. So that is the 4th thing I want you to install into your home is a sump pump. Number 5, now this is even more convenient, waterproofing. Now, if you're trying to build a new house, if you're building a new house right now, we do this all the time for consulting. If it's a 3-piece foundation, which it probably is, especially in Oregon, especially in Portland and Vancouver, or all throughout the Northwest, before they backfill that soil around the crawl space, which is what they always want to do. If it's in the budget, if this is a custom home, what I've done before and what we've told people to do before is install a perforated pipe, install a 4-inch pipe around the entire foundation, and at the very least, backfill drain rock. Do some sort of way to make sure water is not building up around that foundation long term. It is extremely uncommon to do this. Yes, it's a little bit of overkill, but you know what's even worse and even more expensive is calling us after the fact. So even for foundations that are crawl spaces, why not backfill with gravel? It'll be very inexpensive at that time. It'll be even easier just to run that perforated pipe to daylight, and you won't have to do a sump pump in the future in the crawl space if that's what you're really trying to avoid. Now, the best way to avoid calling a basement waterproofer is call a basement waterproofer. If you have a small leak, we are big believers in what I call chasing leaks. We have a very high success rate in doing partial systems and doing isolated systems. If it's in one room and it's not that big of a deal to you because it's just a utility room, it's a guest room, a little bit of water in there once a year isn't the end of the world, that's fine. And I sympathize with that, and we will play that game. However, if we're able to chase that leak, dry out a certain area, the chances of us having to come back later on and having to do the entire thing and having to tear up the entire basement are very, very high. And we can always add on to it. So it is not money lost. Do not ignore the little things. So if you want your local basement waterproofing company to go out of business, do those 5 things. Take care of your home. Don't ignore the small things, but also don't sweat them too much, because at the end of the day, waterproofing is kind of a perfected science. It's a great trade, and the chances of us not being able to fix something are slim to nil. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you have any other ideas and if you had tried anything else with success.